episode, which is a book review. This is actually the podcast very first big review, so this is quite an exciting day. Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office by Julie Gareleck is an inspiring narrative of entrepreneurial grit and determination. The book chronicles the journey of Julie Gareleck, who, without the safety net of venture capital or an Ivy League education, dared to dream and ultimately succeeding in establishing Junction Creative, one of America's leading marketing firms. Julie's humble beginnings in her parents' restaurant in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, laid the foundation for her understanding of business operations. Her experiences in the corporate world, marked by challenging bosses and complex dynamics, fueled her desire to create her own company. This candid account of her entrepreneurial journey offers invaluable insights into self-financing a startup, salary considerations, hiring practices, and generational management differences. Dare to Become stands out among entrepreneurial literature, offering a unique real-world perspective on navigating the tumultuous path to business success. Gareleck's story serves as a testament to the power of perseverance and a guide for those daring to chase their own entrepreneurial dreams. This is my Entrepreneurship Journey podcast. I'm Difua Mahele, and welcome. Entrepreneurship is pivotal for economic growth, any economy. However, starting and growing a business is not an easy job. Your business needs an objective and unbiased independent party to help with decision making. That is why you can rely on Mesh Business Consulting. We empower your business to reach its full potential. We navigate complexity on your behalf, drive your results. So partner with us today at Mesh Business Consulting. We believe that working together and leveraging each other's strengths leads to the most effective solutions. Our team of diverse and experienced consultants will work with you to identify your business challenges, goals, and opportunities. We will design and implement tailored solutions that are grounded in research and best practices. So, whether you are looking to grow your business, scale it, streamline your operations, or address specific challenges, we are here to help. So, call us today or send us an email at info@meshconsulting.co.za. Together, we'll create and refine your plan for success. We didn't get there alone, and neither will you. Julie, thank you very much for coming to the podcast to talk about your book, Dare to Become, From the Corner Booth to the Corner Office. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for this. This is our very first book review. Congratulations. I went through this book. It's quite inspiring. And I would like to congratulate you on this incredible work.
Thank you so much.
Just to get right into it, Julie, Dare to Become, just take us through, before we delve into things, how your childhood was.
Certainly. I mean, I grew up in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which is a small town known for its Civil War significance. So definitely a town that was fueled by tourism. Every year we had 1 million people come to town. And after that, there was, just several thousand after the season. But yeah, grew up, a pretty average, life, 2 parents and a sister. My parents worked for corporations until I was in high school, and then they started investing in real estate and the Avenue restaurant.
Yeah.
So at an early age, I learned how to work for a family business and learned a lot about running a business before I started my career in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And then now you started your career in Philadelphia now as a professional. How were those early years?
Yeah, so I would say, having grown up working for a family business, I swore to myself I would never go into business. And as I transitioned to Philadelphia, that's the only thing I've ever really done.
Yeah.
So I had this, I think, naive perspective that, moving from the restaurant to the professional space, that I would find, and get to work with people that were, very different and, very accomplished. And what I learned along the way is that a lot of the fundamental skills that I learned working at the restaurant really helped prepare me for situations and the environments that I went into.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And then you went on like that, worked several jobs. But then what made you finally quit your job and say, okay, now I'm going out on my own to start my own agency?
It's a great question. I think in my early career, when I worked for an entrepreneurship institute and then a venture capital organization, I had the unique perspective to work with early stage companies who were looking for funding. So I was able to look at different business models, different business plans, and really, be able to determine what looked good as a business and what didn't.
Yeah.
And then as I transitioned to Atlanta and worked in the marketing agency space, I found sort of a disconnect between business strategy and creative execution. And so in my last role, I was desperately trying to figure out what the business was going to be or what kind of business did I want to start.
Yeah.
And just after a series of, challenges and environments that didn't necessarily align with my thinking, I decided to branch out on my own. I definitely don't recommend to people that you quit your job without having the business ready to go. But I did quit my job and, I committed myself the very next day to building my own company. And we just recently celebrated 15 years in business.
Wow. And throughout the book, your personal mantra, it's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. It's all going to be fine. I mean, you use it throughout the book. How did you come up with it?
It's funny if you go back to when I was in college. It's something that I would say when things felt difficult. It was almost like a pep talk that I would give myself to say, you know what, it's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, I've had a beautiful life. I have a beautiful family. I have all of the things that I need. And so it really was just a reminder or a way for me to remind myself that it's going to be fine, right? My husband now says, which I don't think made it into the book, but he always says to me, look, it's never as good or as bad as it may first appear. And he's absolutely right. And so I just sort of adopted the I'm fine, it's fine. And it just became almost a motivator for me to reset my train of thought when I came across a challenge or something that was difficult.
Yeah. I think we should have these pep talks.
You need them. When you go into business, it's hard.
So now let's reflect on day one now of you starting your business. You write that you outlined your to-do list. What was your process?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, working for an entrepreneurship institute and, eventually teaching how to structure a great business plan, I certainly knew what steps were required. I had worked on, hundreds of, business plans, financial models, marketing models. And when I started day one, I realized just how daunting it was, almost overwhelming to do it for myself. So I created a list, and I knew that the list was very, very long, but I wanted to organize from start to finish. And so that what my focus became was just crossing things off the list one by one. I didn't worry about how long the list was, just that I was moving down the list and crossing things off as I went.
Yeah. And that business plan, you say you found it to be not to be an easy task, despite numerous years of expertise in this field. take us through that. I mean, I'm thinking you should know how to do this, you know?
And the thing is I do, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
even in my business, we've helped others write theirs. I think because it was the first time, it was my business and it was personal to me. I felt likely what other clients that I've worked with felt, which is just this excitement to start a business, but the overwhelming amount of work that's required to really execute that business. And so it was a great lesson to me because I've never forgotten that. Even as we work with other clients and helping them grow their businesses, I remember what it's like to be in that seat. And it was daunting, not because I didn't know how to do it, but rather because the impact was mine, right? So the success or the failure of this business plan was mine to own. So I do think that that's what made it more difficult.
Yeah. You know, in your very early days of now your business development, you write that you called up your old friends and associates, people who you knew, and some of them had already had their own businesses going. You call it your most sobering experience because some would say, oh, you started a business, that's cute, or that's interesting. And others would ask you, even if you're looking for a job or something like that. Take us through that experience and how did you draw strength to still continue?
Yeah, you know, I was naive, I think, in the early years, in that, you know, a lot of my network had experience working with me in various roles. They saw how I performed. They knew what I was capable of achieving. And in my mind, you know, when I decided to start my own, I thought, wow, well, hey, we've worked together before.
Yes.
They know how I am, then certainly they'll support me. And I really viewed a lot of those contacts as valuable mentors and colleagues. But I quickly learned that those relationships weren't as valuable to them as they were to me. And the words stung, right? Whether it was how cute and are you looking for a job and I can't hire a new business or we only work with reputable companies. I really was shocked and certainly frustrated. But like most challenges I've ever faced, it didn't change the direction I was on because, you know, you can't really give up when you hear no's. You know, eventually, after making a ton of calls and scheduling appointments, eventually you get a couple of yeses. And I think it's an incredible lesson to have learned because even as I wrote the book, Dare to Become, you know, when I was submitting it to different publishers to see if that they would, or different literary agents, you know, I got a ton of no's. I mean,
Really?
It's embarrassing how many no's I got.
Yeah.
But I kept going and eventually I got a yes. And you know what? It's the yeses that you tend to focus most of your time on.
You know, one other factor that you wrote about that resonated with me in the book was, I'll quote you. You said, remember the people who supported you unconditionally. Thank them often and always return encouragement wherever their journey takes them. I thought this is beautiful. Can we unpack this?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this process has really taught me who has supported me, right? The friends that take my phone call when I'm happy, the friends or colleagues that take my phone call when I'm struggling. You know, many, if not all of these individuals, they're in my life to this day. You know, relationships take time to build. And if you invest as much in the other person as they do in you, it's really something to treasure. So when I wrote the book, I really wanted that to reflect my sincere gratitude for those who walked beside me along the journey. And when I do see them, whether it's for coffee or lunch or to go to a concert, I thank them for being a great friend. And it's important to never lose sight of all of the good in this process. And I certainly feel very grateful that I continue to invest in them as they continue to invest in me.
To reciprocate, I feel like that's so important because
yes, and I think people forget that today, right?
That's the thing.
It's everyone's worried about, well, what's in it for me? But what I've learned is that when you care just as much about them and their journey, it will pay itself back to you. Maybe not today, but somewhere down the road.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Now take us through the first year milestone now of being in business at Junction Creative. You related as a year that challenged you the most emotionally and physically. You had sleepless nights, with no business coming in. And you were doing everything yourself, and you wondered how long you would keep that up. That fear, you likened it to your experience at the Eiffel Tower stairs. Can you take us through that? I think this is in a chapter of a moment of truth.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the first year in business for yourself is like nothing that I can describe in terms of words. I mean, I can say it's hard, but you can't aptly describe what that feels like. So on any given day, it can be exhilarating or it can be debilitating. I remember when I was in high school and I was walking up the Eiffel Tower with my classmates, and we were going all the way to the second level, which is pretty high.
Yeah.
And on the way up, it seems like you're never going to get to the top, right? You just keep walking, right?
Yeah.
And then on the way down, you can see straight through the steps to the ground below you. So it almost feels like you could just fall through. And that is really what I can say starting a business feels like, right? And I feel like there are moments where when you're like, especially in the first year, I went into it saying, hey, in 12 months, this is going to be generating profit. I'm going to be replacing my salary from, my previous role.
Right.
And what I learned was it takes a lot longer than what you initially think. And so it's like, every day I'm putting in the work, I'm moving forward, I'm trying to get there. And it feels sometimes like you aren't going to get there. But then once you do, you realize that there's so much more risk now, right? You've got revenue, you have clients. And so I would say that even after 15 years, it can still feel that way. It's that you're trudging towards a goal, you hit it, and then, you have to kind of push yourself to reset, push yourself to think bigger, or, push yourself to resolve any, challenges that you're facing. So yeah, I mean, maybe not like a super happy experience, but but I will tell you the view from the second level is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now there came a Yahoo contract. Your sister would join you to help you execute. Could you call this your big break?
Oh, definitely. This definitely was a catalyst for the growth that I had been working toward. Prior to getting the contract, it was myself and a couple of contract folks that did some work for me when I needed some extra assistance. But yeah, I mean, I was introduced to a senior leader at Yahoo. They were looking to replace their agency. And through a series of conversations, they ended up taking a chance on this little firm, right? That was still growing. But it definitely did really push us into the next level and definitely helped shape the growth for the agency.
Yeah. And then there's a chapter dealing with money as a startup. In your business, you bootstrapped.
Yes.
Your husband, Steve, who was already successful as an entrepreneur, offered to fund your business, of which you declined. Why, Julie?
I know, it seems crazy. And thinking about now, I kind of wonder would I make the same decision. But, in my social circles, I knew that people, whether it was our friends or, business colleagues, that they would assume that Steve was funding my business, right? Because he was and still is very successful. Yeah. But for me, I really wanted to prove to myself that I could stand on my own. I wanted to prove that I could build a successful business without taking what felt like a handout from my husband.
Right.
And I honestly think it was the best lesson as an entrepreneur because I learned the value of every single dollar that we earned and every single dollar that we spent. And so I really never lost sight of the importance of managing the money effectively. And, I'm proud of the fact that I was able to bootstrap it and I was able to, grow a successful business without having to take money from whether it was my husband or a bank or an investor. I really do think that it was a harder path in the beginning. But I definitely think it prepared me, right, for those tough moments when you have a lot of revenue or you lose revenue. It really still keeps me very, very humble and it keeps me very honest.
And there are some lessons, of course, from your parents that you carried with you, such as now the value of saving money. Because you say when some money started coming in, you watched every dollar. You didn't, even for the business, you didn't buy new computers and fancy things. You avoided that gratification, which isn't an easy thing. Because I think there's money coming in now. Maybe I need a new office with, I don't know, this, lovely art and all of that. How important was this? To not spend that money so quickly. And was it a hard thing to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was both. It was important and it was incredibly hard. From the time I was 16, I dreamed of living a big life, right? I wanted a fancy house, a nice car, beautiful things. And when you start a business the way that I did, and you're literally putting every dollar you have into making it work, when the money comes in, you don't forget those moments of scarcity. And I didn't want money to provide a false security. And so I really had to be disciplined in that, we did buy computers for the office, but we didn't buy Apple computers, which were $4,000 instead of, $800.
Right.
I, still after 15 years in business, I check our accounts every day. I work with our accounting manager every month to make sure that we're not overspending. I'm always looking for ways for us to, save costs. Just last year, we moved our office literally next door so that we could save $1,500 a month on rent and get a better space. So I think because I remember the feeling of, being down to my last $4,000 and questioning, could I be successful? I think those moments prepare you that when the money comes in, you save it. You save enough for a rainy day because just as quickly as it can come in, it can go away.
Yeah. Now, talking about rainy days, you're having lunch with your sister, Mercy, at the Ritz, and you now receive a call from Yahoo, your big client. Take us through that moment.
Yes, it started out as a great day, right? I was invited to New York City to speak at a marketers conference. I was on a panel with chief marketing officers from some of the most notable financial institutions. And it really was like a pinch me moment, right? I was on a panel with some of the best marketers in the business. And after the panel presentation, which was at the Ritz, we decided to eat lunch at the Ritz, which is not normally, where we would buy a business lunch, right? Because it's certainly not that inexpensive. But, while we were sipping on our Cosmopolitans and waiting for our $30 salads, I received a call from our stakeholder at Yahoo. And she had explained that the CEO was pooling all agency budgets and they were pooling their own staff back into the office. And because I was generous and gave them a 90-day recurring contract instead of an annual contract, I was the first agency to be let go because our terms were 90 days instead of 12 months. So she did give us a 90-day notice. But in that moment, I could just feel the blood drain from my face. And, Marcy and I still talk about that day because she was watching me talk to our stakeholder. And It was the call I always feared getting. Yahoo was a huge account for us, and it represented a large percentage of our revenue. And I was always afraid, every day that they would call and they would pull the budget. And in that moment of feeling proud of myself, I was excited about the opportunity that I had to speak on this panel. And I'd like to say that this is the reality of being a business owner, right? Here I am, a very high moment, but with a very real low moment that followed. And so kind of as I mentioned to you, it's as quickly as it comes, it can be taken away. And so definitely a moment I'd like to forget, but I have not been able to.
Yeah. Of course. Now, in the chapter, The Art of Communication, you refer to the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, I think by Dale Carnegie. And you write that one's business success relies on one's ability to speak clearly and to write well. How important is communicating well? Things like email etiquette when interacting with clients.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, really, the art of communication is critical, right? It can oftentimes be the difference between success and failure. And a lot of folks in business today have grown up with technology, or they're used to technology. They speak to each other informally in text messages and emails. And I think the one thing as businesses today is that we cannot forget how critical it is when you communicate that you're doing it well. And so in the book, I talk about how we've created sample templates for our employees who come in so that they understand, to address somebody by their first name, to create a complete message that answers potential questions that they will ask. And it's definitely an area that we spend a lot of time on, whether we have someone that's coming to the agency with years of experience or not, they all get the same training, because I do think in this fast-paced, tech-driven world, we're losing the ability to hear each other and to also, communicate back value, right? And so I do think it's probably one of the most important things that you can have. And I will say, if you can speak clearly and you can write well, it will definitely make the journey a lot easier.
Yeah. And being sensitive to how others want to receive messaging. This is now in the title. It's in the details. You wrote that about one of client of yours, Tom, who preferred to launch straight into business or the purpose of the call. When I was going through this chapter, I was thinking something similar happened to me, where I went to a client, took the first meeting, and the client was so receptive, almost informal. You pull out your hand to greet them. They just want to give you a big squeeze, a big hug, and offer everybody coffees. And then on email, on email, it was totally different. And on my email, I was like, okay, this chappy person, because I'm thinking that's how the client was. But in the response was like straight to business, no pleasantries, no. I was like, okay. I have to learn quickly. On email, it's different.
Yes.
So it's important to read the room.
I mean, it is. And I mean, what I learned with this particular client, and I still laugh about it, is that, someone once said that I'm almost like a cheerleader at a funeral, right? Like I'm very happy. I have, I have a very outgoing persona. My glass is always full, right? Yeah. So I definitely, in some cases, come across a little too peppy. And for this client, I mean, his glass was always half empty, right? So he just definitely didn't resonate with my peppiness. And he would make comments about, gosh, Julie, I mean, you sound like you're having a terrible day. And I realized that I had to almost auto-adjust how I spoke and how I could handle him, because he was an excellent client, and definitely had a great relationship with this client. But what I had to learn was that he received messages differently than how I present messages. And so it was really just an effort of learning how he liked to receive messages. And so I did. I lowered my tone, and when he called, I adjusted the way that I spoke. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that it's a skill everyone should have in business. It's an exercise that we should all learn is when you're able to read a room and you're able to read the different personalities in a boardroom.
Yeah.
You can actually be heard if you are mindful of how they like to receive that information. And it doesn't mean that you can't be who you are, right?
Right.
It just means that in some cases, you do have to look at the way that they communicate and be able to match them where they communicate. And I think that that's certainly something that's taken me many years to perfect, but definitely a really important skill.
Wow, quite educational. Now, further now in the book, the hobby comment. Now, this is now in the book where one client or associate referred to your business, Junction, as just a hobby for you. And that stung, that was painful. Take us through that.
Yeah, it still hurts thinking about it. And it was a situation where I'd been with this client for 7 years, really, from the time they started until the time they sold their company. And I provided, management consulting, ongoing services. I oftentimes, was told by the team that I cared more about their business than they did, and things like that. And as we got closer to them selling and exiting the company, one of the partners walked me to the elevator, and after a management meeting that we had that maybe was a little bit more tense, right? Because there's more on the line, right? They're at a place where they want to get the most money that they can to sell their business.
Yes.
I completely understood that. And it was my job, though, to be mindful of, hey, here's some of the pitfalls that we can encounter. Here are the things that you want to watch out for. And as we walked the elevator, he walked me down and he said, well, honestly, Julie, I don't really know what's going on, but, it just feels sometimes like this is really just a hobby for you. Wow. And I remember looking at him and being crushed, because after 7 years of delivering everything I said I would deliver, including the fact that they exited for the amount that we had put in the original business plan 7 years prior, we had accomplished every goal that they had set out to accomplish. And I was part of that the entire way. So to liken my work and my effort to a hobby was, and I question, right? Like, was it because I was a female that he felt like he could try to put me in a corner and say that it was a hobby for me? Was it, because my husband was successful and he didn't feel like I needed to work? Or was it really just a terrible comment? Was it really just a terrible thing for someone to say? And I don't necessarily think he knew how I took that comment, but I will tell you, the second the elevators closed, I literally started crying. Because it felt like all of this hard work and all of these positive experiences that we'd had together were rendered to ashes, right? With one comment. With one comment. And so it was hard. But I still celebrated, when they did sell their company. They did invite me to their dinner to celebrate the hard work. But I have to be honest with you, that conversation has never left me, because it was very, very humbling, I will say.
I can certainly relate.
Yeah.
I have my own story to that. I don't know. It you feel attacked and you feel, does they even take me seriously? And what was all that work that I put in so much to receive such a comment. I don't know, but it's something else.
It is. And I think for me, and I'm sure how you are too, it's you can't let those moments derail your progress.
Definitely.
But it definitely made me look inward and go, am I putting out energy that says that this is a hobby? And am I putting out, am I too bubbly? And they think that, I literally scrubbed through all of the things that I could do better. And I guarantee you, he probably never has thought of that conversation since. But I still think about it to this day. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. For me, I know. Now another chapter on adversity. Now, in this chapter, Julie, you went through trying times now in your personal life. And you write that the key to surviving any kind of setback is to embrace it and cope with it and not to panic. Can we talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Adversity is a great equalizer. And I think I referenced that in this chapter is that, we're all going to suffer from something, right? We are going to struggle, whether it's losing a parent, struggling with, a pregnancy loss, or surviving a particularly grueling work environment.
Right.
It's something that we will all face. And one of the things that I really have been mindful of along the way is that, in those moments, it's easy to let a situation control every part of you, right? Every part of you, from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed. And while it might seem unfair, or it might seem hard because someone else isn't struggling as much as you are, I really do believe that in the rising and the falling is when we evolve as humans. We become stronger, we become more experienced, and we learn how to move forward in spite of whatever we're struggling with. And so, I want people to understand that you can't change the outcome in many cases, right? So the only option you really have is to embrace it. If you don't, you're going to spend a lot of time, just like the last conversation we were talking about. I could have let that comment stop me from growing in my business. I could have, let that comment stop me from wanting to do better, to do more as a business owner. And it was really hard to hear it. It was really hard to stomach it. But I knew in that moment that was going to be a moment that helped me grow. And again, not all adversity is going to turn out positively, right? Yeah. Certainly if there's a loss, but I think if we are able to embrace it and we're able to find our way forward, we'll see the beauty in the path down the road, right? So I look back to some of those situations I had faced in Philadelphia in my early 20s.
Yes.
And I just think about if I would have let that stop me, I would have missed out on all of this, right?
Yes.
So.
Wow. And talking about looking back, you look back with gratitude, of course, as you just said, to your past. You mentioned the events of your early life shaped who you are today as a person and as a businesswoman, from starting your business in the basement of your home with no clients.
Yep.
To building a now multi-million-dollar business. You further penned down that if you won't take a chance on yourself, then who will? How important is looking back, Julie, to go forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And honestly, looking back is really what motivated me to write this book. It had always been a goal of mine to write a book since I was a little girl. And, when I was faced with, 13 years in business, what's the next milestone? Yes. I couldn't find the right motivation. And so I read through journals, from when I was a teenager, when I was in my 20s and my early 30s. And looking back forced me to look at what all I've accomplished. And even on days where you feel like you're not making progress, it's a great reminder of how far you've come.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've been so incredibly grateful for all of the opportunities I've been given, even the most challenging ones, right?
Yeah.
It shaped who I was then and who I've become now, and I will continue to evolve. We're all a work in progress.
Yes.
But I mentioned, that it's important to think about, if you won't take a chance on yourself, then who will? And, I'm so grateful that I bet on myself. And even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it, it's been the best investment. So I would encourage anyone to invest in themselves and invest in others and just allow the journey to unfold as you go.
Yeah. I like this book, Julie. It's quite encouraging, especially for someone who, if you're just starting your business or you're even thinking of starting or taking a bet on yourself, it just outlines, from start with nothing, with 0 clients, with no big money backing you, and you walk that journey and the intricacies of starting a business, dealing with employees when now you have employees. It's quite encouraging. It's like a roadmap, It's like you've walked the journey, and we coming behind, and it's like you're leaving trail marks, on how to do it. And so thank you. This is just an incredible book for me. I found it so inspiring and a learning moment. I took so much from it.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, when I wrote the book, it helped me. It helped me move forward. And I swore that, if one person could take one lesson, whether it's how to format a really great email.
Yeah, of course.
or whether it's, learning how to overcome a really difficult moment. For me, along the way, like I said, having people that were building me up, not everybody has that. And so I wanted this book to be just a little bit of inspiration to say, hey, we're all on a similar journey, right? If we're starting businesses or if we're growing in our career, we're all fighting the same battles, maybe not necessarily exactly the same career path.
Yes.
But that there's camaraderie in it. And so, I'm not, and I don't pretend to be a billionaire or a $1 billion business, but I think that for many of us who are building, whether it's a small business or you've been in business for 10 or 20 years, we're all looking for just a little bit of hope on the dark days. So,
yes.
So I'm thankful that you enjoyed it, and certainly thankful for this opportunity to be here.
Awesome. Dare to become, from the corner booth to the corner office. Julie, when can we expect it on the shelves?
Yes, absolutely. So it will be on shelves September 3rd.
Yeah.
It's already available for pre-order on virtually any site, whether it's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and there's bookstores in various countries.
Yeah.
There are links on my website as well, but it will officially be on shelves September 3rd.
Oh, awesome. Julie, thank you. Thank you for coming to the podcast. It's been eye-opening. I'm sure our listeners will go get the book. It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to our show this week. If you enjoy our show and would like to support us, help us by spreading the word. Tell your friends about Merge and engage on social media. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handle is @Merge Podcast. Merge My Entrepreneurship Journey on LinkedIn. If you would like to engage with us privately, drop us an email at defoe@mergepodcast.com. Remember, we are available and streaming wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Defoe Magele, and you've been listening to My Entrepreneurship Journey